Welcome to a look back at the royal family in 2022. I'm Marcia MacMillan. On the morning of September the 8th, we learned of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. And the days that followed, we saw millions across the UK and around the world come together to mourn the loss of the monarch and honor her legacy after 70 years on the throne. To help us look back at the days and weeks that followed, I'm joined by CTV's royal commentator, Richard Berthelsen. Hello there, Richard.
Hello.
So let's talk about how the Queen was remembered, especially in those early days, and the legacy that she's left behind.
Well, this was the event we all knew was coming, but it still had maximum shock value because it seemed like the Queen was just going to go on forever, particularly as she was undertaking her constitutional duties right until the end. And I think there was, I think people were surprised by the emotion they felt at the passing of this 96-year-old woman. Many people, almost most people, vast majority of people had no one else in this role. And the Queen had taken on an iconic quality, because she was just so much part of the fixture of life. And you could kind of count on her and the way she appeared at events and her soothing tones in her remarks, over the years. So I think there was a real, people were surprised at what they felt about it. They were also surprised at just how quickly the accession works. And before you knew it, we had a new king and a very, very changed royal family. And I think the impact of it hasn't really fully set in on some people. Obviously, there was massive interest in the event in terms of the television audience. But as we know, in the streets of London and everywhere the Queen's casket passed, there was huge numbers of people who wanted to take part in this epic moment.
And Richard, to your point about the surprise that I think people felt, how emotional they were about her passing, that was shown in that line when people lined up for sometimes 24 hours or more, that queue, and it became its own phenomenon. And I was there and I talked to those people and they didn't mind. Can you address that? Again, they spent more than a day in that line. They made friends with the people that were there, but they were all sharing in this grief and this tremendous sense of loss. Could we have imagined something like that happening with all the plans that were in place for her passing? Could we have planned for that?
Well, clearly the British government did plan for it because they had signage, they had washrooms, they had all sorts of thinking about it. And we have had huge queues for previous lying in state occasions, such as the Queen Mother or the Queen's own late father, George VI. But I think what's astonishing is that in this day and age, when people basically live in an instant society, they can get the answer to a question instantly by going online. They can do what they want. They can order food. They can, really almost travel virtually. It was extraordinary that people would take that time out of their otherwise busy lives to do a simple thing like queuing up. Of course, the Brits are known for it, but there was no shortage of foreign people and Commonwealth people, and indeed Canadians, in fact, some Canadian politicians in that queue, which really became, as you say, a phenomena in itself. It's extraordinary that people did that. And of course, the payoff was when they actually got to the front and got to, the lying in state, they weren't allowed to take pictures. And for, I think, a modern age, for people to be deprived of that was a real shocking thing. People had this moment with the Queen's coffin in the center of Westminster Hall where they weren't actually taking a selfie. And I think the whole thing was sort of otherworldly for the times we live in. And I think that's what made it the phenomena it was.
And now we are ushering in a new era of the Commonwealth, Charles ascending to the throne, King Charles III. What do you think the future holds for King Charles?
Well, as you say, it's the Carolean age, as it's called. We just left the second Elizabethan age, which is a great reign, obviously, longest in our history. It's going to be a shorter reign. The king himself is in his mid-70s. The queen consort just turned 75 this past year. So they're going to have a limited amount of time where they can really put an impact on this reign before they themselves will have to start stepping back in a way that the Queen did, I would say, in about 10 or 15 years. So what we've seen already is a much more informal reign. We see a king who is much, much more apt to be tactile with people. more open to taking pictures with them in the way that they do. He touches people. The Queen herself, Queen Consort, actually, hugs people on occasion. So I think it's a very different thing. And I think the tone for this reign was set right at the beginning when the King and Queen Consort walked into Buckingham Palace after a walkabout on the first day after the Queen had passed away. And also the nature of his quickness in traveling around the United Kingdom and speaking as he did was simply unprecedented setting. So we're going to see a very different approach. It's going to be a less hats and gloves monarchy, more tactile, more with the people, more speeches, more opportunity to interact for as long as he can maintain that pace. And he has been going at a very steady pace in these first few months.
And Richard, final thought from you as we wrap up this year and we look at the royal family. In many ways, they seem like a tighter unit than ever. But at the same time, we have Harry and Meghan in the United States releasing their documentary. Of course, we're waiting for Harry's new book called The Spare coming out. What do you see happening with the relationships within the royal family as we go into the new year?
Well, the relationships were tested in 2022, there's no doubt. Even during the funeral occasion, there was a number of miscommunications and misunderstandings. I think the documentary has served to really widen the gulf once again between the California duo and the rest of the royal family. And with the book coming out in the new year, that's likely to pour more salt in the wound as he examines, possibly in greater detail, his own relationship with his father, who is now, of course, the king. So, as you say, the working royal family, which is now down to, 11 people, some of them are quite elderly, is quite a tight unit, has been working extremely hard to fill this gap in the past few months. But the loss of these two young people in the royal family, Harry and Meghan, is really marked. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult to have this kind of relationship where these barbs are continuing throwing over the ocean. It's really a priority in some way to resolve that. Whether that can be the case after the docuseries and after the book is a really big question for 2023.
Indeed. And on a positive note, we can look forward to a very big party with the coronation of King Charles in late spring. Richard Berthelsen, as always, thank you so much. Happy